How did a toy line about mutant sheep and pigs become one of the strangest ideas of the 1990s and then disappear almost as quickly as it arrived? By the end of the 1980s, the toy industry was bigger than ever. Companies had discovered a winning formula: create colourful characters, build a simple story around them, support everything with a cartoon, and hope kids rushed to stores to collect the toys. Franchises like G.I. Joe, Transformers, and He-Man had proven the strategy worked. And then came Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And the massive success of the Turtles changed the toy industry almost overnight. Suddenly, toy companies realized that weird could sell. The stranger the idea, the better. Mutant Turtles were dominating store shelves, and everyone wanted to create the next bizarre animal-based phenomenon. And that environment gave birth to one of the oddest toy lines of the era, Barnyard Commandos, a franchise built around radioactive farm animals carrying military-grade weapons and fighting a war for control of a contaminated farm. You couldn't make it up. It sounds ridiculous, and that is exactly why people still remember it today. So the concept was created by toy designer James Groman, who imagined a world where military waste contaminated a farm and transformed ordinary animals into intelligent soldiers. And instead of running from danger, these newly evolved creatures formed rival armies and declared war on one another. The conflict centered around two factions. The heroes were the Rams, or rebel army of military sheep. Their enemies were the Porks, the platoon of rebel killer swine. Every character came loaded with military puns, oversized weapons, and exaggerated personalities, and the entire concept felt like a parody of the action figure boom that was sweeping through toy stores. Yet, at the same time, it was trying to become part of it. You see, that combination of comedy and action was the franchise's greatest strength. And unlike G.I. Joe, which treated military conflicts seriously, Barnyard Commandos embraced the absurdity of its premise. The sheep and pigs fought with complete seriousness despite being mutated farm animals, and kids immediately noticed. The idea was impossible to ignore. Even better, the property landed with one of the hottest toy companies in the business. Playmates Toys acquired the license. Now at the time, Playmates was riding high thanks to the incredible success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And if any company knew how to turn strange animal characters into a hit, it was absolutely them. Now everything appeared to be lined up perfectly. The toys hit shelves in 1990 and looked fantastic. The packaging grabbed attention immediately. The artwork was colourful and detailed. The character designs were memorable. Every figure looks like it belonged in a wild Saturday morning cartoon. And at first glance, the line had everything needed to succeed. But unfortunately, there was a major problem hiding inside the package. The figures didn't play nearly as well as they looked. Unlike G.I. Joe figures, which featured multiple points of articulation and endless posing possibilities, Barnyard Commandos were made using soft rotocast vinyl. Most of the figures had very limited movement. Their legs were fixed, their arms offered minimal articulation. And in practical terms, they weren't true action figures. They were closer to collectible figures. Kids could line them up, of course, they could imagine battles, but they couldn't pose them in dynamic ways or recreate action scenes like they could with competing toy lines. And that limitation became a serious issue. The figures looked ready for combat, they just couldn't do much once the battle started. Now in the toy industry, play value matters, of course. A great character design can get a toy into a child's hands once, but keeping it there requires interaction. And the mismatch between concept and execution quickly became a big problem. But still, there was another opportunity to build momentum. Like nearly every major toy line of the era, Barnyard Commandos received its own cartoon series. In 1990, an animated show was produced to help support the toys and expand the franchise's bizarre mythology. The series followed the ongoing war between the sheep and pig armies while introducing viewers to the strange world created by the radioactive contamination. Now, on paper, it seemed like exactly what the franchise needed. Memorable characters, action, a bit of comedy, a toy line already sitting on store shelves ready to go. But something never clicked. The show struggled to build a significant audience. While it gained some fans, it never achieved the cultural impact of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Transformers, or other major animated franchises of the time. And that created a dangerous cycle. You see, the cartoon wasn't popular enough to dramatically boost toy sales. The toys weren't successful enough to justify major expansion of the cartoon. Both sides depended on each other, and neither side was generating enough momentum. So, by the early 1990s, it became clear that Barnyard Commandos just wasn't breaking through. Part of the problem was simply timing. The toy aisle had become brutally competitive. Children already had countless options competing for their attention. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles dominated sales, Transformers remained popular, G.I. Joe still had loyal fans. New toy lines appeared constantly, each trying to become the next big craze. But kids only had so much allowance money. Parents only had so much patience, and when faced with a choice between fully articulated Ninja Turtles and largely static farm animals, many children chose the more established franchise. There was also the possibility that Barnyard Commandos pushed weirdness maybe just a little too far. The Ninja Turtles were strange, yes, but they were still martial arts heroes at the end of the day. Transformers were giant robots, and those concepts felt naturally cool. Mutant sheep and pigs fighting over a radioactive farm required a bit of a bigger leap of imagination. The premise was definitely unforgettable, but memorable doesn't always translate into massive sales. So as toy sales slowed, support for the franchise began drying up, and the cartoon disappeared. Future expansion plans faded away. The war between the Rams and the Porks ended almost before it truly began. Within a remarkably short period of time, Barnyard Commandos vanished from stores. Many kids, it felt like the franchise appeared one day and disappeared the next. Yet unlike many forgotten toy lines, Barnyard Commandos refused to disappear completely. Years later, nostalgia collectors began rediscovering the property. People who remembered seeing the figures on toy shelves started sharing photos and memories online. And others who had never owned the toys became fascinated by just how unusual the concept was. The designs held up surprisingly well. The sheep and pig soldiers remained instantly recognizable, and the entire franchise became a perfect example of the creativity that defined the toy industry during the late 1980s and early 1990s. As nostalgia for that era grew, Barnyard Commandos developed a cult following. Not because it had been a massive success, but because it represented a time when toy companies were willing to take enormous creative risks. And some of those risks became billion-dollar franchises, others became forgotten curiosities. I think Barnyard Commandos probably landed somewhere in between. Now, more recently, the property has attracted renewed interest as companies continue searching for classic 80s and 90s brands to revive. Fans have long argued that the concept itself was never the problem. If anything, the idea remains just as entertaining today as it ever was in 1990. The real issue was execution. The toys didn't fully deliver on the promise of the characters. The cartoon never became essential viewing, and the franchise entered one of the most crowded toy markets in history, and that combination just proved impossible to overcome. The rise and fall of Barnyard Commandos is ultimately a story about unrealized potential. It had a memorable premise, it had great character designs, it had a major toy company behind it, it even had its own cartoon. But in a world dominated by Ninja Turtles, Transformers, and countless other competitors, being unique just wasn't enough. The franchise serves as a reminder that great ideas alone don't guarantee success. Sometimes timing matters. Sometimes execution matters. And sometimes a toy line can do almost everything right and still get lost in the crowd. Yet more than 30 years later, people still talk about mutant sheep and pigs fighting a radioactive farm war. Not many failed toy lines can say that. For a franchise built around armed livestock, I'd say that's a pretty impressive legacy.